Good afternoon everybody and welcome to K5. My name is Graham Land and I'm a K5 OpenStack technologist. What does that mean? It means I work in the cloud space. I've been working in data centers and automation for the last 20 years. For the last 6 years we've started calling it cloud and working in the cloud, working in cloud space. This podcast is all about to be able to work at scale, automating data centers, and that you need to learn and know how to use APIs, which are application programming interfaces. And the particular platform we're interested in today is Fujitsu's K5 IaaS offering. So if we look then, Fujitsu K5's IaaS platform, it's based on OpenStack and it uses a Keystone, a project called Keystone, which is the authentication endpoint for OpenStack and Fujitsu's K5. We'll cover that off, and we'll also cover cores, which you'll see now in a minute. It's a cross-origin resource sharing challenge you have when working with web browser applications. Why do you want to do infrastructure as code? Why do you want to learn about APIs? Well, it's basically where the world is going to now from an automation perspective. Your application developers are familiar with code already and writing code for applications, and the benefits of the change control, change management systems from repositories where they can check their applications into repositories and then have a log of every change, every iteration that application has, so they can quickly make changes and they can quickly roll back changes. So the same now applies for infrastructure. So with the big race to virtualization, and even now with the bare metal service APIs, you can virtualize all your infrastructure. And what we mean by virtualizing all your infrastructure, you can actually codify all your infrastructure and define it in templates, in files that you can store in repositories. And that has the exact same benefits as it does with your applications, except now you can marry both your applications and your code, your infrastructure code together in the same repo, and then you can control it in the same fashion, which means that you can then work towards developing a continuous integration and continuous deployment pipeline to speed up your iterations. And it's all, again, about, from an application perspective, it's all about cycle time and trying to reduce your cycle time. And then why I've picked the Keystone API endpoint. Well, OpenStack's a very popular platform today for private clouds. Fujitsu use it for their public cloud. And once you learn how to authenticate with a cloud and the OpenStack platform, you can effectively then consume all of the services within it. It's the same mechanism everywhere when you make a HTTP request, passing a token, receiving a token, and modifying the body. So you have all those capabilities in the demonstration today. We'll see coming forward. And why did I choose Angular2? I chose Angular2 because I gave a Python demonstration recently down in London, and it was a very boring demonstration. APIs and demonstrations can be boring at the best of times when you're talking code, but Angular let me very quickly put a nice front end together so that I can demonstrate the API with a visual to go with it. It's also very good for anyone who wants to start working with Angular2, good for your career. Let's move on. Again, you can pause this now. If you want to look at any of the links there, and I'll upload this, I'll include this PowerPoint presentation with the blog. Okay, so let's jump straight to the application. Where are we? So down here, the bottom screen, second screen, you see it's a very simple Angular application. I just supply username, password to log in. The big thing to remember with Keystone API endpoint, there's different versions of your API endpoints. And Keystone version 3, which is the version that OpenStack seems to use as default now, it gives us domain capability, which is multi-tenancy capability, the simplistic view. That requires a domain, or in this, we call it in K5 a contract. So the Keystone endpoint for Fujitsu K5's IaaS platform and OpenStack is version 3, is what you want to be able to need and use. So if you're using any third-party applications, you want to know if you'll be able to use it with Keystone, with Fujitsu K5's platform, find out if it's using the version 3 of Keystone. And with that, you'd have a username, password, and your regions. So let's have a quick look at the documentation. I know it's still a little bit boring. So if we go back to I'm using the native OpenStack documentation here. We're looking at the identity endpoint, which again is Keystone, and I want to look at password authentication. So it's just to show you, this is the endpoint here that we're looking at, and I'm just going to show you how we use it, how we consume it. Okay, so this tells you exactly what you need to do, what you'll be sending with it, if you're going to send content, all that with it. And if we go back and look here, you've also got Fujitsu's guides here. So use both. So you can use OpenStack and you can use Fujitsu's. The reason sometimes it's necessary to come to Fujitsu's guides is because OpenStack is obviously the latest and greatest version. So you're looking at the upstream code, the upstream documentation, and nobody in production will use the latest and greatest version of anything. You tend to be a few versions behind, and Fujitsu is no different. So we have the documentation here is all published that's relevant to our IaaS clouds, the K5 IaaS platform, but they tend to be on, in sync with the OpenStack documentation as well. So for this one, they're both the same. So I'll just use the OpenStack documentation. So this is the API endpoint we're going to use. You'll see here it tells you what it needs, what are the optional requirements, what are the standard requirements, and it gives you an example then of the body that you'll use with it. And then it also tells you here in documentation what comes back, so what to expect in your response. And the important thing to notice here is the information that we need, the main thing that we need, is actually coming back in the header. So the X-subject token, our token is going to come back in the header rather than the body. So this was a change made in OpenStack a few years ago. I can't remember which release. So let's look at how that translates then in the application from an application point of view. So if we look here at the application, and this is the authentication service. So again, if you look here, just look on the left-hand side here, Angular2 is all modular. It's all modular based, and it makes it very, very easy. So I have a login module, which has a front-end page associated with it. I've got a home module, which again has a web page associated with it. But then I've also got services modules, and I'm using an authentication service module. So this is it's called dependency injection. This service is being injected into the module in the login module. Just to be aware of that, but very, very nice, very, very nice way of working within the platform. So let's quickly jump down here and you'll see, so here's the endpoint. You'll see here, I'll show you this little funnies there. If you recognize from the documentation here, you'll have the v3 auth tokens, and that's what we saw a few minutes ago from the docs up here. So the v3 auth tokens, this guy here. So that's what we mean when we're using the API endpoint. You're trying to work out what's an endpoint. So effectively that's the endpoint. So that's what we're talking to. When we send a command, we're pointing into that address, and then it's going to give it a certain detail and get a response back. So that's where that matches in. The body there as well, which I've shown you earlier on, is just the body that we've seen in the documentation. So you can cut and paste and just adjust your parameters as need be. See in the documentation here. Here's the body, exact same thing, just formatted slightly differently with same content. And then headers. So headers is another thing you need to do. So we're sending JSON body text with it. So we tell the content type is going to be application JSON, and then we'll accept a response back. So it's application JSON as well. So this is all standard HTTP requests, HTTP calls to be aware of. And then when we get the information back, we get a response back. It gives you a nice, this isn't actually Angular. This is, maybe it's going to be part of Angular soon. This is RxJS, which is another JavaScript framework. Well, it's more of a library that lets you manipulate your responses very quickly, very easily, make nice HTTP responses, make nice clean HTTP requests very easily. So you see here, I'm just making the call here, which goes off and talks to K5, and then brings the information back into this guy here called a response. And then here's how I'm mapping the details back. And again, the important to notice here is that first of all, I'm getting from the header, I'm reading back the X subject token. And then the following ones here, the ones down the bottom, are all just standard reading from the JSON body. Okay, so let's quickly have a look and see what that looks like from the application's point of view. So here we go here, username, password, put in my contract details, and put in and that's not what I wanted to happen. So let me just pause that for 2 seconds. Okay, sorry, so I wanted to show you a failing login first of all, so let's try that again. And oh look, we get a failure. So what is that failure? So the first thing you quickly do is open up your developer console, and if you look here, no access control allow origin header is present. So what this is effectively telling you is this is the CORS issue, cross origin resource sharing issue. And there's a great blog post about it here. So do a Google for Thierry Templier, and he'll explains it all very clearly. But basically, it's to prevent cross-site scripting attacks. It's built into browsers. It's a new capability in all modern browsers where it prevents one application trying to talk across to another application. So that if you were authenticated in two different applications within your browser, and one application was able to jump across to the other application, it could steal your credentials, and from a security perspective, not very nice. So CORS is there, but sometimes CORS is permitted and allowed. So there's two solutions for this. One is that you can enable CORS on the server. So in our case, it's Fujitsu Public Cloud. We don't have that option, so we're not able to enable CORS. So the second option then is to proxy your requests. So what I mean by proxying your requests is you stand up a server and have server-to-server communication. So you talk to a server that does allow CORS, or you talk to a local server that you're in control of, and then that server can do a server-to-server communication across to K5. So that's exactly what we're doing here. So I'll show you a little proxy service, and again, this is all still in JavaScript. This is actually Node.js. So there's a nice little application here. If you look at the module, CORS Anywhere module, CORS-Anywhere module, all this does is it takes any request that come to it and it sends it off. It does a CORS request for you. Okay, so it sets all the headers and that, and then it will take the information and send it back to you. Okay, so all this is very, very simple. It's just a little Node.js server that runs on port, listens on port 22337. And when this is running, it will just proxy all the requests that come from my web application and make them look like their server application calls. Okay, so we go back to authentication service. This is what I wanted to, so we comment out here. So where we were going directly to the identity endpoint, and then instead of going directly to the identity endpoint, we go through our local proxy service on port 223, you'll see there. Same details, so we still make the identity service call, port 443, and then the key thing is your auth tokens request. So that's the workaround for CORS. Good to know. This proxy service, you can put this proxy service anywhere, so I just have it in the same folder as the Angular application, but it's a Node.js app. You just run it, just Node and run it. Again, it's documented. So let's see what happens then when that change is in place. Obviously save the changes. Come back over to my application. Now let's try and log in. And this time if you look, there we go, we're in, successful. Let me just refresh this guy here, Control-Shift-I. So if you look there, you've got your current user token and your user token here. So this is more from an Angular point of view. I'll show you how this mechanism is implemented. You can see here now, we're now inside K5. We've got a valid K5 token. This is the token here. And this shows you the authorizations, the different roles you have associated with it. And you can see all the endpoints that are available there within K5. Okay, so that's the end of the K5 presentation, but let me quickly just jump back into our code there to show you from the authorization point of view. There's a component called AuthGuard. So if you look at when we log into K5, when we successfully get a token here, you can see I stored a token in local storage, and that's what I'm showing you here. So there it is in local storage. You can see the token, all the details. And then just back to the code again here, if we look at what the AuthGuard service is doing, that's just, not the routing, so routing here, the routing is showing you what routes are protected. So you can see the login route isn't protected, anybody can go to it. But if you try to go to the home route, you can see that it's protected by AuthGuard. But the one I wanted to show you was the AuthGuard here, this guy here. So if you look, the way it sets to whether you're authenticated or not is merely it's going down to looking at the local storage, and if there's a current user token there, then it says you're authenticated. Obviously in a production environment you'll do some more validation there, so you'll make sure it's a valid token. You would probably want to store it as a cookie in reality and encrypt it as well. But for this demonstration, it's just a simple mechanism to show you how you can use it and leverage it. Okay, and with that I'm going to say thank you very much. That's the end of the demonstration. Hope you enjoyed it. Happy stacking.